A good question to ask is this. Since Israel is not a theocracy, right? It is currently a secular nation, like all other nations with their, the institutions, with their executive power, their legislative power, etc. Then why is there a spiritual warfare between Israel and other nations? Why is that? Apparently, they are the same countries, but why is there a spiritual warfare? That is a very good question. You know why? Because when we say the word theocracy, many people think that we refer to a time where in King David's time or in Solomon times, etc. But actually, theocracy is a Greek word that means theos, that means God, and kratos, that means power. In other words, when we speak of a theocracy, we see the government of God, by God, I'm sorry. A case of theocracy is where the elected officials are considered as representative of God. It is a country where religion controls the government, where all the decisions are made not by the selected officials, but by the religion in place. So think about Iran or Somalia, for example. However, guys, because most countries of the world are not officially governed by a religion, does that mean that these countries are not a theocracy? That's a good question also to ask. In the Christian worldview, every nation is a theocracy, every nation. Think about it that way. Everyone has a spiritual master, agree? So every nation has a God, or God with capital G. In fact, one of the reasons that God created the nation of Israel is to be a light among all the nations, is to be the manifestation of God among other nations that serves idols. So God chose Israel in a time where it was surrounded by nations that serve idols as their gods. They serve wood, they serve stone, they serve trees as their God. So Israel is called, according to the book of Ezekiel, to be an example, to serve God alone, and not to imitate the surrounding nations that serve idols. So does that mean the Israel that we have today is the perfect example of God's will? I'm not sure about that, because like all other nations, Israel endorses, in many ways, postmodernism as the worldview. Now, if you are not familiar with this concept, I encourage you to go back to the first two videos where we talk largely about postmodernism and its effects on society. Now, even though Israel is not the perfect example of God's will, if we want to see what is going on right now in the Middle East, we need to go back to where it began. First and foremost, the ongoing conflict, guys, between the sovereign God is the conflict between the sovereign God, against the gods of the other nations. Remember, again, every nation has a God. Whether we talk about France, whether we talk about Brazil, Cuba, or Haiti, every nation has a God. That also means that the leaders of every country, in the world are somehow influenced by their respective gods. In Haiti, we observe that most political leaders, for example, worship the spirits of voodoo, the Loas. That is why it is not surprising to see that the laws and policies and the culture in general reflect the belief system of voodoo. In other words, even though a country portrays to be a republic, a democratic country, or a socialist country, they are subscribed to the dynamic of a theocracy. directly or indirectly. It is a direct theocracy when the institutions of the government are controlled, by the official religion. It is an indirect theocracy when the majority of the leaders of this country endorse a particular religion. So we can talk about Haiti, for example, as an indirect theocracy because the majority of leaders endorse voodoo. Now, if you understand that, you will also agree with me that before we go to the political aspect of what is going on over there, it begins with the spiritual cause. So now, going back to the opening question, since Israel is not a theocracy, it is currently a secular nation with the executive power, legislative power, with all the institutions, then why is there a spiritual warfare between Israel and other nations? The answer is not complicated, my friend. It is because God chose Israel. Yeah. As an effect, Israel becomes the epicenter of spiritual warfare. The root of all the aggression, remember this, against Israel is a spiritual war going on. It is not a political or ideological war. Remember that every conflict begins or is by default a spiritual war. Remember this. Israel is where the Jesus story began. And guess what? It is where the conclusion will take place as well. And according to the Bible, the nations will be in conflict with the state of Israel until Christ returns. Revelation 12 makes it clear that the underlying problem is spiritual, not political. Watch this. According to the Bible, guys, Israel is God's chosen witness, and through Israel came the Messiah, Jesus Christ. So now you understand why Satan hates the witnesses, the Jews, and all who follow Christ, who follow the Messiah, and all who are blessed through Israel, all that who are the believers in Christ. Talking about Christians now. So remember this. The last days timeline is closely tied to Israel. Why? Well, because when we trace the timeline of world events from this time, we find out many issues of the day are closely tied, linked to Israel. We see that Israel is the barometer of the world. With that being said, guys, we will continue to look closely at what is happening in the Middle East and help you understand the narrative. It's your friend Emmett. Subscribe to this channel. We love you all. Thank you.